Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Picture a great architect, capital G, capital A.
Huh.
What do you see?
Oh, I know this one. It's a guy, almost certainly. Probably wearing a black turtleneck, maybe some very expensive, eccentric eyewear.
Yes. And he's standing in front of a skyline holding a sketch of some twisted glass tower that looks like it crash landed in the middle of a city.
The starchitect,
Yeah,
the massive ego, the person who wants to bulldoze the past to build a monument to their own genius.
exactly. It's a cliche for a reason. But today we are looking at someone who is basically the antimatter to that entire image.
We are. We're doing a deep dive into the work of Miquel Del Rio and his firm Mideri. They operate out of Basel, Barcelona, and Medellin.
Yeah.
And frankly, Miquel is a hard figure to pin down.
He calls himself a soft radical, which I have to be honest, it sounds a bit like marketing fluff at first.
It sounds like a contradiction.
Right. How can you be soft and radical at the same time?
Radicals are usually
Really
throwing
does.
threats.
Yes.
Not, listening to client feedback.
It does sound like an oxymoron, doesn't it? But when you actually look at the portfolio, especially now in February 2026, as they launch this new strategic phase, it starts to look less like a slogan and more like a survival strategy for modern architecture.
Okay, so break it down for me. What is the soft and what is the radical?
The soft is the method. It's about being what he calls a universal translator. It's acknowledging that an architect isn't a dictator.
You have to listen.
You have to listen to the client, the city, the neighbors. You have to be porous.
Okay, so he plays nice. Where's the radical part?
The radical is the refusal to compromise on the result. It's a hard line in the sand about values. Specifically, it's a total rejection of the economic logic that drives most construction today, the logic of tabula rasa.
The clean slate. Tear it down, start fresh.
Exactly. Miquel's argument is that the most radical thing you can do in the 21st century is not build something new. It's to take what's already there, the messy, the ugly, the old stuff, and surgically alter it to work for the future.
It's an interesting premise, but I'm always skeptical when I hear architects talk about saving the past. It usually translates to expensive and slow.
That's fair.
But before we get into the economics of it, we need to establish if this guy is actually the real deal. Because it's easy to have radical values when you're renovating a kitchen. It's another thing entirely when you're handling public money.
That is a very fair point. You can't be a radical if you don't have authority. And Miquel earned his stripes on a project that is anything but small. We need to talk about the house in Basel.
This is the project he did while at FDRS, right? Before Mideri really launched this new independent phase.
Correct. This was the proving ground. We're talking 9,000 square meters and a budget of 45 million francs. This isn't a garden shed.
No. And the building itself, it wasn't exactly what you'd call welcoming.
Not at all. It was the former military barracks. And just think about the architecture of a barracks. It is designed quite literally to be a fortress.
A wall.
It's a wall. Its whole function is to separate the military from the city, to keep people out.
So his job was to take a machine for exclusion and turn it into a public cultural center, a machine for connection.
Precisely. Now, here is where the starchitect would have come in and said, gut the interior, let's put in a giant glass atrium and make it look like an Apple store.
Right. Make it shiny.
Miquel didn't do that. He and the team used a strategy they call the unfinished.
The unfinished. Okay, if I'm a client paying 45 million francs, I do not want to hear the word unfinished. I want the job done.
I know, it sounds so risky, right? But Miquel argues that finishing a building is actually the riskiest thing you can possibly do.
Walk me through that logic.
Okay, so think about how fast the world changes. Technology, work habits, culture, it all shifts every 5 years, maybe less.
Sure.
If you design a room specifically for the needs of 2026, let's say a dedicated podcast recording studio, that room is perfect for today. But in 2035, maybe we don't use studios anymore. Maybe we all just beam thoughts directly to the cloud.
The room becomes useless.
Exactly. It becomes obsolete. And obsolescence is the #1 reason for demolition. We tear buildings down because they can't do what we need them to do anymore.
Ah, I see. So by leaving parts of the house unprogrammed, just raw, flexible space, he essentially future-proofed it.
He did. By doing less, he actually extended the life of the building. He created a risk minimization strategy for the investors, disguised as artistic freedom.
Okay, so that establishes his authority. He can handle the big stuff. But now, Mideri is pivoting. And the core philosophy seems to be this concept of alt new.
Alt new, German for old new.
It sounds like a vintage clothing shop.
It kind of does. But it's a direct challenge to the binary way we usually think about cities. Usually you have two camps. Camp A is preservation.
Don't touch the old building, it's historic.
Right, which gives you museums, or what Mikkel calls zombie buildings. They look alive on the outside, but inside they're dead.
And then there's Camp B, development.
Tear it down, it's inefficient, let's build something modern and green.
So Altno is the middle ground.
It's the third path, the link. It treats existing buildings not as sacred cows and not as garbage, but as a library. A library of solutions.
A library.
Yeah, you keep the structure, you keep the gray energy, and you write a new sentence using those old words.
You mentioned gray energy. I want to dig into that because I think this is where the soft radical idea stops being poetic and starts being, well, economic.
This is the core of the argument.
Because usually saving an old building is seen as the expensive, sentimental choice.
That is the common wisdom. It's just cheaper to build new. But Mikkel disputes that, and he brings receipts. Look at the parking Lisbuchel project. They call it the Alchemist.
This is an old parking garage, right? An ugly one.
An ugly, utilitarian, concrete parking garage. Most developers would look at that and see a teardown. It's prime real estate. Why would you keep a garage?
So how does keeping it make financial sense?
Gray energy isn't just about carbon footprint, though that's huge. Gray energy is capital. It is money that was already spent to dig the hole, pour the concrete, erect the steel.
So if you demolish the building...
You are literally destroying that capital. You are paying money to remove money.
Wow, that's a really powerful way to frame it. You're not just destroying a building, you're burning the investment of the past.
Exactly. For the parking Lisbuchel project, they did the math. They proved that reusing the skeletal structure of the garage was significantly cheaper per square meter than demolition and new construction.
So the radical stance, refusing to demolish, was actually the most pragmatic financial decision.
That is the soft radical sweet spot. He isn't winning the argument by shouting about climate change. He's winning by showing the developer that tabula rasa is bad for the bottom line.
So we've got the Tejas showing he can handle scale. We've got the parking project showing the economic logic. But now this new strategic phase, looking at the project list, it's kind of all over the place.
It is diverse, and that's absolutely intentional. They are moving from a bureau of ideas to being builders, and to do that, they need to show range. Mikkel likes to compare the firm to a David Bowie record.
Okay, I'm listening. Is he Ziggy Stardust or the Thin White Duke?
The point is that Bowie didn't have one style. He inhabited different personas depending on what the art demanded. Maderi is rejecting the whole idea of a signature style.
Which is a risk. Usually you hire a famous architect because you want their look. You want the squiggle or the white box.
Mikkel says that is a trap. It turns the architect into a brand and the building into a product. He believes context demands its own language.
Okay, so let's look at the contrast. On one side, you have the Kunstmuseum Bern.
The heavy hitter again. Huge institutional weight, a historic structure. The theme here is a museum should be a city, not a vault.
So, similar to Gay House, breaking down walls.
Yes, but with a different tone. This is high culture. It's about taking a classical, introverted building and performing surgery to connect it to the public street. It requires a very formal, precise language.
And then, in the same portfolio, you have La Sandwicherie.
The sandwich shop.
I mean, talk about whiplash. We go from a national museum to a place selling baguettes.
This is the agile intervention. It proves they aren't snobs. It proves that design value isn't dependent on a massive budget.
It's the guerrilla side of things.
Exactly. Speed, wit, using cheap material to create a strong identity. If the Kunstmuseum is a symphony, La Sandwicherie is a 3-minute punk song. Both require skill, but the energy is totally different.
And then somewhere in the middle, you have the domestic projects. He uses this term, preservation as surgery.
I love that metaphor. Surgery, because demolition is a hammer. It's blunt. Surgery is a scalpel.
You cut only what is necessary to save the patient.
Exactly. In these housing projects, the cut itself is the design. Maybe you slice through a floor to let light into a basement, or remove one wall to connect a kitchen. It shows that whether he's working on a museum or a private home, the rigor is the same.
I want to pivot to the how, because we're painting this picture of a very thoughtful philosophy. But construction is messy. It's dirt and noise and mistakes.
And Mikkel seems to lean into that. He calls it the dirty kitchen.
Which is the exact opposite of how most architects present themselves.
Right. Go on Instagram, look at architecture firms. It's all pristine renders, blue skies, perfect lighting, no electrical outlets, no messy cables, no people.
The hero image.
Mikkel hates the hero image. He thinks it's a lie. Mederi's strategy is to show the dirty kitchen. They post the sketches, the diagrams, the cardboard models held together with tape.
Why? Is it just to be edgy?
It's to show the process. He calls it approximative orbits.
That sounds like we're back in space.
It's a humble admission. It means we don't draw a straight line to the answer. We circle the problem. We test things. We might be wrong 3 times before we're right.
But doesn't that make clients nervous? If I'm paying you, I want you to know the answer. I don't want you orbiting.
You might think so, but actually it builds trust. Because it positions the architect not as a magician who pulls a rabbit out of a hat, but as that universal translator again.
Translator between who?
Think about a construction site. He calls it a disconnected orchestra. You have the client who has a dream. You have the lawyer with the zoning code. You have the builder who has a budget. And the banker who wants a return.
And none of them speak the same language.
Not at all. The lawyer doesn't care about the light fixture. The builder thinks the architect is hallucinating half the time. Mikkel's job, the soft radical job, is to stand in the middle of that chaos and speak plain language.
So he translates the poetic vision into a pragmatic reality.
He calls it an almost impossible task. But if you don't do it, the building gets built badly, or it doesn't get built at all.
This idea of translation and connection,
Yeah.
it feels personal for him. I was reading about his background, and he's kind of a nomad.
It is deeply personal. He was born in Barcelona, has Colombian roots, but practices in Switzerland. He's always the outsider.
And he views that as an advantage.
He calls migration the ultimate act of synthesis. When you are a local, you see the city as it is, you take it for granted. When you are a migrant, an outsider, you see the gaps, you see the potential.
And he believes architecture can fix the fact that we're all so isolated. I mean, that's a big claim. My building will solve loneliness.
It is a big claim. He argues that physical space is the last common ground we have. We live in digital silos, we are polarized politically, but in a building, we have to share space.
Does he have a concrete example of this? How do you force people to connect?
Look at the Bel Air project. They designed the circulation cores, the stairwells and hallways, not just as tubes to get you from the street to your door. They designed them as rooms.
As rooms.
Places to pause, places to run into your neighbor. So the hallway isn't just wasted space, it's a social condenser.
I like that, a social condenser.
Exactly. Or look at the Basel Soul Exchange. This is my favorite example of the soft radical mindset.
The zero waste exhibition.
Yes. They wanted to connect Basel and Seoul intellectually. But shipping art materials halfway across the world is an ecological disaster.
And so the radical move is, don't ship anything.
Correct. But the soft move is, send the ideas. They sent digital files. They designed tables for the exhibition in Seoul that could be built locally. But, and here's the genius part, they designed them so they could be used as office desks for the city of Basel afterwards.
So they build intellectual bridges instead of burning jet fuel.
It's that dual thinking, radical sustainability, zero waste, but soft implementation creating useful furniture that connects people across continents.
We're coming to the end of the dive, and I want to touch on what this all means for Mikkel personally. He's launching this big strategic phase, handling millions. But he isn't exactly living the Starchitect lifestyle.
No, and that is a deliberate strategic choice. He drives an old car, he lives in a 2-room flat.
Why? Is he just cheap?
No! He argues that living humbly buys him artistic freedom.
How so?
Think about it. If you have a massive mortgage, a leased Porsche, and a firm with huge overheads, you have to feed the beast. You have to take every project that comes along, even the bad ones.
You have to compromise. You become part of what he calls the meat grinder.
Exactly. By keeping his personal life small, he keeps his professional life honest. He can afford to say no. He can afford to be a radical.
So the cheap car is actually a shield. It protects his integrity.
Precisely. He's playing the long game. He has this line that I think sums up the whole deep dive. He says, "We aren't building for the next 15 minutes of Instagram fame, but for the next 200 years.
That is a heavy responsibility to place on a pile of bricks.
It is. And he leaves us with this final provocative thought. Are we building structures strong enough to carry the weight of a future we can't yet imagine?
It really makes you look at the buildings around you differently. Are they disposable wrappers? Or are they containers for the future?
And are they walls that separate us? Or bridges that connect us?
Mikkel Del Rio and Mederi are betting everything on the bridges. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. As always, stay curious.
And keep connecting.